course, it's not working the best. But all right, so to start off PD today, as always, I want to start with a grounding and just take like 30 seconds to share a success or celebration from class. If it can be guided reading focused to kind of like get us into thinking about guided reading, that's even better.
Okay. I'll start out.
Yeah.
Okay, one skills activity for my 2 second grade groups is that I get the new vocabulary from their book, and I give them a highlighter, you know, and they can highlight the vocabulary, then find it in context, and write the sentence so they get an idea of what the sentence is, and it's kind of like a pre-read.
Oh, mine is that I'm able to teach guided reading once a week to cover Lauren, so that's very exciting. And I think the kids are bearing with me on, because we do it differently. It's still the same type of format, but yeah, so it's very exciting.
I'd say in my guided reading, I'm definitely getting better at the behavior issues and making sure I'm on top of that. So it's going a little bit smoother at this point.
I would say for me, it was my first time teaching dictated writing, and I thought that it maybe didn't go as well as I would have wanted, but it was definitely a really good experience for myself and for the kids, and I look forward to getting more dictated writing lessons.
For me, it's like, so I picked out a vocabulary which was hollow today, and they were like super excited about it. Like drawing in, they were like didn't want to get to the reading, but we did. They were just like, wait, I want to show you another picture of like hollow, what hollow means.
One of my successes is one of my students is learning more sight words, and he's now able to touch each word when he reads.
And like connected to you too, Dominic did so well in group today and was super positive about it because he pre-read the book with Liz. He's like, I know it. I mean, he almost became a little bit too much of a stinker about it, but he was like, it was a positive experience for him, so he wasn't dreading it as much. And he did not ask me once when you're coming today, so yes. Yeah, progress. So awesome. All right, so let's check in on our Padlet. So remember, thumbs up, I did it. Thumbs aside, I am working on it. Thumbs down, I have not.
We're all on the other side of the screen.
Oh, are you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see, thumb up.
Still working.
Still working. Okay, still working. Okay. And ladies, do not let me forget to send this to you today. I'm sorry. Okay. So today is our video share around dictated writing. And so this is a structure like Glinda is super familiar with because we did it about every 2 or 3 weeks last year, where we brought in videos and we kind of like gave each other feedback on them. And so this is something we're going to start doing as a team to help improve our own practice. So this is our goal for today. So, when we are thinking about our videos, there's a couple things that I want to kind of get at. So, these are kind of our ground rules, and every time we show videos, we're going to revisit these ground rules because we need to make sure we're remembering them. First of all, we're all here to learn and improve. There's no such thing as a perfect video, so today I'm going to show you my video. It's by no means perfect, but it's all about us learning from each other. We kind of had talked a little bit about this idea of curmudgeon versus gold. Instead of looking for like the curmudgeon or what's bad in a teaching video, we always want to be looking for the gold and like what can we learn and walk away with to put into our own practice. Because our ultimate purpose, just like our goal stated, is to reflect on our own skills and practice with students in order to grow our skills. So we are ultimately moving kids faster. So we have a protocol that we use. It's going to feel a little weird because it's really fast, but this is the protocol we're going to go through. So we're going to start off with an introduction just to kind of re-ground us in our purpose, and the person whose video we're watching, they can give us a little bit of background. Then we're going to do a presentation and watch the video. We're going to have time for response where we can provide feedback, and the person whose video it is not then there's time for that person to share their reaction. And then we'll kind of cycle through steps 1 to 4. We'll see how many videos we can get in. We usually only get to watch 2 or 3 people's videos because it's such a short time. So then we'll have kind of an open conversation about kind of things that are sitting on our minds after going through the protocol, and then just a reflection and what our next steps are. So in this process, we give 2 types of feedback. We give warm feedback, which emphasizes the strengths of the teacher's practice, and then we give cool feedback. Notice it's cool, not cold. So it means that we're always like posing it in the forms of questions. Like, I wonder why you chose to blank. I'm curious about your thoughts on blank. It's really because we're not here to judge. It's just kind of like pushing their thinking a little bit more. And these are on the form. So there's a form in the middle. Everybody could grab one. It's a front and a back, and so you'll use one side for each teacher. So this is the time, and I need somebody to volunteer to be my timekeeper. Alright, so we're going to start with an introduction, and I'll have you start in just a little bit. And then we're only going to watch 3 minutes of the video. So I'm going to start this off because this is our first time doing video. And I very strategically picked my 3 minutes I'm going to show you guys, kind of based on some of the things we talked about last time. So we're only going to watch 3 minutes. You guys are going to have 2 minutes to give me feedback, and then I'll have 2 minutes to respond. Okay? Alright, so do you want to start for 1 minute, and I'll do an introduction. Okay. So kind of to ground us in our purpose, we're all here to grow and learn in our own practice. In terms of an introduction to my video, this is my dictated writing for one of my groups. We were having a bit of an off day. I look goofy because I have glasses on that say you cannot talk to me because I'm with a group. But I'm going to show you guys kind of like how I moved from the conversation into the writing, because I know there were some questions about that last time. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So hopefully all technology works. So we'll set it for 3 minutes. When the timer goes off, we'll stop it. I might let it go just a couple seconds longer.
I like your use of the word sport. You know, when people are in a very good sport and they always want to win, they want to be like the first one. Do you know what we call that? A bad sport. We could also call it competitive. So we've learned that Danny, he's very competitive because he wanted the first fish and he didn't get it. And then he wasn't being a very good sport about it. Very good. What about Ella? What do we know about Ella?
We know about Ella.
So we know Ella is... So she's not mad like him. What did Ella do for Danny in this book? What did she do?
What did she do for Danny? What she did for Danny? So I guess she didn't want to lose her belly. So to give him a signal, she waved her. She put her hat, lucky red hat, and just start waving it in the water.
Yeah. Oh, so she helped to save him. So is she a kind person or is she a mean person? So we know she's kind because she helps to save Danny. Very good. So we're going to write about what we learned about Danny and Ella. I want you to find the first blank page that you can. Oh, there's my pencil. They helped clean up a little too well. How many fingers are you? Thank you. Nivea, you need to have your eyes on your computer. Yeah, we haven't used it in a while, so we need to turn to the next page so that we have a practice page. Turn to the next page. Oh my gosh, what happened here? This is the practice page. It's been a while since we've done this. This is the practice page. This is your pretty and perfect page. So we're going to write what we learned about Danny and Ella. We're going to write, because we said Danny was competitive. So we're going to write, Danny is very competitive because he wants to catch the biggest fish. So go ahead and grab a pen in 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh, you guys are so fast. Okay, so we're going to write, Danny is very competitive. I'm going to show you Danny. Do you know how to write Dan? Yeah, and so we're going to capitalize it because it's a name. Dan. And then to make it Danny, we add another N. How did you know it was a Y?
Because Dan, the the Y is silent, but see, like,
Well, but it's like in this word, baby.
yeah, but see, like, whatever words sound like they in, like, E, like, baby.
It's a Y. Good. I want you to add Danny to your pretty and perfect page. Oh, pretty and perfect, over here. Over here. Because you don't need to practice it. I gave you Danny.
I'm gonna go just a couple seconds so you can see.
Come on, quick, Danny. It's okay. Yeah. Come on, 3, 2. So we're writing Danny is very competitive. So what's our next word? Is. You know is. Write it quickly. Good. Let's reread. Danny is very. Try very over on your practice page. Very. All right.
So I went a couple seconds over because when you say a couple different words. I forgot to ask beforehand. Does anybody have any questions about the protocol? Okay. Awesome. So so that was presentation. Now we're in response. So you have 2 minutes to give me feedback. Now I'm just gonna listen. I'm not gonna say anything.
I liked that there was a lot of student talk versus teacher talk. I think sometimes for me when I'm having discussions, it ends up like I'm trying so hard to prompt them in a certain direction that I end up leading a lot of the conversation. So I noticed that it was more, until you switch to the writing portion, it's definitely more student talk than teacher talk.
I like the way you gave support. When they didn't know how to start a response, you would say Ella is, instead of them saying, just using the wrong ways to get into it. And also, one of the kids was talking a lot, and then you narrowed it down. So is he good or is he bad? Or, so then they kind of get the idea. That's what it means.
This isn't really cool, but it's kind of a question. I wonder why you chose the word repetitive. And I know you can't talk right now, but I just want to get that out there. Because I'm thinking that maybe it was a word in their story, or maybe not, but to just pull, you also mentioned this word. Sorry, I'm babbling.
You also kept the pace moving, like 3, 2, 1. That's quick.
I really like that you were like, why did you know it was a Y?
One thing that I wanted some clarification on was like why you chose to have them go right to the pretty and perfect page with the word Danny, because I guess my understanding was I thought that you wrote it all out on the practice page and then went to the perfect page, so I just wanted clarification on how that was.
I don't do this, but watching you, after each word, you have them reread the whole sentence from the beginning, which I think helps with that comprehension, making sure that it all makes sense.
Good job getting that in. Okay. So 2-minute reaction for me. So a couple things in terms of competitive. I just wanted the vocabulary, and these 2 boys have been working a lot on word parts, which is also why I strategically was very strategic in how I introduced Danny, and then that's why I emphasized the Y piece with Josiah, because that's what they've been working on, and they just need to notice some more of those parts and transfer them into their writing. In terms of why I had them write it back on their pretty and perfect page first, actually looking at that, I should not have done that. And that's kind of a next step for me is because I had them copy it, and as I was watching it, I was like, oh no, they're not actually supposed to ever copy. You're supposed to show it to them, then they try it, and then you hide it. Because kids don't learn anything by copying. If it's something that is with competitive, we probably would have found parts together, and then I would have had them copy it, because I don't know that these 2 boys could get too competitive on their own. But Danny, they could have gotten to on their own, so I should not have had them copy it, because that would have just had more of an impact and more of a transfer if they tried it on their own.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I definitely get that, and that makes a lot of sense compared to how I was doing it last week. So if you go through the whole sentence and they write it on their practice page, are they then intended to copy it from their practice page and so that sort of copying is okay, but just not like I'm copying it from what my teacher wrote.
Because it's just,
Okay.
they're not going to learn anything from copying. And
Right.
that's what I always tell them is like, you're not going to get better at writing these words if you just copy from me. And like, when kids ask me how to spell stuff, I never tell them. I might help them sound it out. I might show them a word that has a similar part, like baby for the Y on the end, things like that. But I never tell them because they're not going to learn anything by me telling.
Okay.
Did I get all the questions? Okay. All right. Good time.
Sorry. I'm just being real. It's not to the our teacher. So you give me. I'm gonna go and call Dad. Is there?
Yeah.
Well, move this clip.
Okay, so that was my video. Who would like to be the brave soul to show their video next?
You can show mine.
Okay. And yours is on the Swivl, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a part that you want us to watch?
I didn't rewatch it. I didn't know how.
Okay, and that's you can't really. Well, unless you do it on there. Okay. Was there like a part that you want, like when they're writing? Do you want the discussion? Or part that you want?
I would definitely say probably the writing part because I mean after what we just talked about, I know there are definitely things that I could have done differently. But
Okay.
so the writing
So-
part is probably the last few minutes.
Awesome. So while I kind of get that going, do you want to set a minute and you can give us some background?
Sure. So this group is actually it's really exciting. They're like my most exciting group. They came in at the beginning of the year reading at a level 18, and now they are reading at a 34. So they are just doing so awesome. They're cruising. They have a really high level of understanding vocabulary and that sort of stuff. But that's also kind of what's keeping them from the next level. So my other issue with them is that they love nonfiction. They very much prefer nonfiction to fiction. So,
And does this look like a writing piece?
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know how exciting.
It's totally fine. It saves space. Alright, so will you set it for 3 minutes?
Pencil. Then you're going to show it to me, and if you do a good job, I will let you write it in pen. Okay? So go ahead and write it in pencil first. Eastern. You're writing the whole thing. Eastern ground snakes are one of the world's deadliest. And I mean Brianna, please get started. Deadliest snakes because it forms blood clots in its victim's blood. So you're doing it with your pencil first, kind of like a practice round, and then you'll be able to do it in pen. When you write in pen, I want it to be your very best handwriting. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. It's like you write the draft in pencil, we check it, make sure it's good, and then you write it again in pen, making it look really good. Maybe you're doing an excellent job. Your first moving up. Eastern brown snakes are one of the world's deadliest snakes because it forms blood clots in its victim's blood. Wonderful. You may write it in pen now. You can write it right underneath. I want your very best handwriting. Go nice and slow because if you mess up with the pen, you can't erase it right. So you mean that's a warning?
2 minutes for a response.
Yeah, I like the board you have right by you. That's convenient. And the pen versus pencil, so I get an idea what practice versus perfect.
And the connection to the draft versus the final product. That was nice.
I love that you emphasize that you made a mistake. I think that makes it so much better for kids.
Also, you emphasize having the very best handwriting for the perfect page, so I know that it has to be perfect there.
And I was wondering why they were copying it. Because sometimes I think, okay, it's, they listen to it and write it, and then afterwards they see what it looks like.
I also love the vocabulary. It's just like it's a strong word, so you just get it right. I'd also like to hear, just like, I'm just curious about what the conversation was like leading up to that.
And was it chosen together as a group, or did you lead them to that? I was curious.
So my reaction, this was probably my second or third time teaching a dictated writing lesson, and so I think one of my big misconceptions after watching Lauren is what we did, and probably maybe what would have been a more interesting part to watch, is we created the sentence together, and so we wrote it on the board or we kind of all talked about it, and then I wrote it down, and then we all like approved it, and then they just copied it. Like that's the part you saw, and I think my misconception was that I thought that's the dictated writing portion was like the focus was like us coming up with it together. And so I guess what I would do moving forward would still to have them, like I think our discussion is really rich, and I think that I loved the way like the words like victim and clot and those sorts of things came into it. But I guess I would write it and then erase it and then have them write it on their practice page and then edit it based on the sentence. Or maybe like cover the sentence and flip it back up or something. So that answers your question. So we did come up with the sentence together. What we actually did is we went back. The book was really long. It was nonfiction, and it was about lots of different uses for poison and venom. So we actually went back and reread the part about the eastern brown snake because I wanted them to like really focus on the vocabulary compared to the whole book had just so much information, and they were not overwhelmed, but it was just like a lot. And so I wanted to kind of narrow it down. So I knew that I wanted them to write about the eastern brown snake. And then we kind of talked about like why it's such a deadly snake, and that was our discussion. Any other questions? Did I get them?
So did you get, just wondering, did you get that idea for like out of interactive writing, or one of the ideas from?
The dictated writing, it was our professional development last week, or two weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had never taught that type of writing before, so it's definitely a new experience for me.
So sadly, we only have time for 2 videos, but I do want to have just kind of like an open conversation, and so this will we'll kind of roll these two together because we only have about 5 minutes left anyway. But I do want to say like what you did was interactive writing. It was amazing interactive writing, like that creating the story together and having one place for it. And I think like reflecting on my delivery of professional development, I could have been clearer. So then next week we'll go back and we'll dive a little bit more into dictated, and then we'll do videos again. But dictated is like it's literally like oral. You give it to them orally, and they write it, and so it's pre-planned.
Okay.
So like that sentence that I had my students doing, it was just like that's exactly what I wanted them to do, which is why I made them use like competitive and things like that, because that's what I planned and I like guided them to it. And so, but that like what you had there was interactive writing.
So then just to clarify, for interactive writing, is that exactly how you would do it? In the sense like you would come up with a sentence together and then they would copy it?
They wouldn't copy it, but you just come up with that sentence together.
And then they would all write
Yeah.
it.
And that's, I tend to gravitate more towards interactive writing, especially with these grade levels, because I think, like you were saying earlier, like the conversation you have there is so amazing. Everybody feels like they have ideas down, that kind of stuff. And you can just come up with incredible writing, and it can really push their own writing in that way.
So then, in the interactive writing, since that's more of what I did, if they are writing it and they make an error, do you go back and correct it? Like if so, they're
so
you've all come up
they're
with this.
not writing. There's only one message.
Oh, so,
like
they
your
never
whiteboard.
write it down.
So then what do they do
okay.
afterwards? Do they
Nothing.
write on their own or?
Nope.
Okay,
So you might have them depending on the group's focus. Like if we think about my group, and I told you guys their focus area is finding parts of words. So like if I was doing the Eastern brown snake one with it, like some of the words that you had, like clots, there are some parts clots that they could find, and they would write it on a whiteboard. And then like one kid might add it to our whole group writing, or I might add it. That part doesn't really matter. But they're like practicing whatever their focus areas are on like whiteboards, but they're only practicing parts of it. It's like those individual words. But you have one thing. And we'll get into it, and I'm writing down like notes for things that we need to cover in PD
Okay.
on my end. And so like why we might choose dictated over interactive over independent, why we might choose it in each of those. So it is incredibly confusing, which is why we focus on one at a time. Because it is, like, it's hard to kind of differentiate. Because I know Glenda and I even had a conversation, and she had a misconception around it. And I was like, yeah, because we haven't spent a ton of time, and last year she didn't get to put it into practice, so.
Okay, so just to clarify then, so
Yeah.
yours was dictated, which is already pre-planned. This was interactive where this is where the one pen comes in.
Yep.
But for there, because it's a writing day, they can just like write a couple words on the whiteboards.
It's more about, so interactive is more about message creation. So it would be things like vocabulary, how, and like you had mentioned with mine earlier, like the sentences, like how we would structure those things. It's about message creation. Dictation's about word solving, because they have to individually solve each word. And then independent is putting it all together. So it just depends on what each group needs.
That's a good clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then so one more question. I'm sorry. So since it dictates about word solving and they have the practice page and the pretty page, if at any point they're practicing and it still isn't correct, do I as the teacher still cross it out? Okay, because that's what I've been doing. I just want to. Okay.
Or you might just have them like try it again. I mean, and those are all like personal teacher preferences, things like that. The idea of the practice page is they get to perfect on the practice page. And so for some kids, you think like, oh yeah, they'll totally, with clots, they'll totally get it. And then like they can't get the CL blend, and so then you give them the blend and then they can finish it. But it's perfect on that page before they transfer it. The idea is that pretty and perfect page should be absolutely perfect with no errors.
Could you do dictation 2 days? Because I was wondering if, like, let's say the first day you give it, and then they get more familiar with it, and then the second day, sort of like, see how much they learned, or?
Well, it's not about them memorizing that message. It's about them getting strategies to solve words.
Okay.
Because in dictated, you're taking the message away from them, like off their plate, that they don't have to worry about holding the message. They don't have to worry about creating the message. All they have to worry about is solving the words.
Okay.
And so I would say no, because that's not the point of dictated writing, not in this context.
So getting to the perfect page, you correct it, and then they rewrite.
Yeah. Well, no, you don't correct it. You give them support to where they are getting it correct. So like with clots, if they're missing the CL blend, I might give them another word that they know that has that, like
Do you
close.
write it anywhere?
I'd write it on a whiteboard.
Just individually or for the whole?
It just depends. So everybody's working on the same word at the same time. So everybody would be writing clots at the same time. And so I would you kind of, when you do it, you intentionally do it a little loud so everybody can hear you. And if other kids need that support, then they can kind of use it. So I would write like close on the board because that's a word that they probably know and that they've seen. And like how did that starts the same as clots? Use that part to help you. It's confusing. We'll read. So next week, like I'll bring in some more like, information, and we can watch more of my video, things like that to kind of clarify because it is very hard. And I think the difference between dictated and interactive are the hardest differences to come, like to figure out. Independent is actually the hardest one to teach, but the easiest one to figure out. So.
So you might be doing all 3 different types of writing with every level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So closing the next steps, please provide me with feedback and let me know how I can support you. So like for me, when I'm thinking about my chart up here for Delta, it's like we need to go back and revisit the differences and the procedures for them. Post your next step on the Padlet. Implement, if you got feedback today or if you're just kind of like sitting with something that we talked about, please implement that in your dictated writing. And let me know also, if you want me to do some informal coaching or work around your groups, like I know Glenda's the only one that I officially coach and obviously Brianne. But if you guys want me to come and help you, like we can do video stuff, because I know you guys all, well you teach in the afternoon, yeah, but you guys teach when I'm teaching it, so we can get creative. So feedback, Padlet, Brianne and Marlena, I'm gonna send the Padlet to you right now.
Do you want to find a couple of things that Dominic knocked over the trash can and then of course Cynthia was our one star and it was actually
Somewhere up. So he's moving up.
moving up. Yeah, the 3 based I was like I'm trying to pick up all this trash and it came up.
Oh,
so I told him I would leave it.
Thank you.
And Brianne, is it just B Huda?
Yeah.
I always have to find yours. Okay. Here's the Padlet, so you guys can just double click here. You put your name and just what are you gonna try before next time?